My name is Lily. I live with Emily, who I now consider like a real sister for certain reasons. My parents passed away in an accident right after I started high school. Since then, I've been living with my brother, Owen. To be honest, I've always hated Owen. Ever since we were kids, Owen would bully me. He'd pull my hair, mess it up, and even broke my cherished toys. He'd laugh at me when I cried. Violence was the norm, and I had to endure his constant snide remarks. I've hated Owen since childhood. If Owen ever needed my help in the future, I'd probably abandon him. Owen is a selfish person who always thinks he's the best and hates losing. He's a terrible person who'd hurt others for his own benefit. After losing our parents, an uncle offered to take us in, but Owen refused. I was hesitant to leave our home and live with a relative I barely knew. We both thought we could manage on our own. Living alone was tough, but we managed. However, Owen and I stopped talking. He started going out at night and hanging out with rough people. I started to hate Owen even more. A few years after Owen graduated college and started working, he suddenly brought home a girlfriend. Her name is Emily, and she's incredibly beautiful and elegant. I wonder where Owen met such a beautiful woman, and why she'd date someone as terrible as him. I didn't think they were a good match, but it's not my place to say. Emily said she'd be moving in with us. Isn't this a bit too sudden? Is Emily really okay with this? I had to ask. I'm fine with it, but are you sure you're okay, Emily? We had a little disagreement with my dad, but my mom said it's an experience. If her dad thinks it's reasonable, and they've all agreed, then I have nothing more to say. And so, a beautiful woman named Emily moved into our home. After living with her for a few months, I realized she's an amazing person. She took over all the household chores that I had been doing. At that time, I had graduated high school, but hadn't gone to college. I had no ambitions and was used to doing housework. Above all, I didn't have the confidence to do housework while going to university. But Emily encouraged me to find my passion, saying it's never too late. Ever since my parents passed away, my life had been a cycle of chores and school. I'd wake up, make breakfast, do laundry, go to school, and then come straight home to clean and make dinner. I didn't have time for friends or part-time jobs. I was living like a mom during what should have been an exciting time in high school. I didn't even have a boyfriend. Not that I was interested. Until Emily pointed it out, I hadn't realized I had no hobbies or passions. Looking back at my high school life, I felt a bit lonely. I remember talking with friends in middle school about wanting to get part-time jobs and boyfriends in high school. I decided to reconsider my future. I thought I'd start with a part-time job, but I didn't want to leave all the housework to Emily, so I helped her whenever I could. One day it hit me. Is Emily actually amazing? I was pretty confident in my cooking skills since I've been doing it ever since we lost our parents. I also often looked at books. I initially thought Emily, with her elegant demeanor, wouldn't have much experience with housework. I was wrong. Emily was perfect at cleaning, laundry, and especially cooking. Her cooking was so good, she could be a pro. And it made me wonder again, why is she with Owen, who has such a terrible personality? I started to admire Emily. I thought of her as a real sister. She said she felt the same way about me. We even started going out for meals and hanging out. But Owen didn't seem to like that Emily and I were getting along so well. And so, years later, Owen found himself at the center of a major incident. One day, after several years had passed, I got a call. By this time, I had already moved out and was living on my own. The call was from Owen. For some reason, he was furious and yelled over the phone, "What are you doing on the day of the ceremony? You better not miss it." I responded, "What ceremony? I haven't received an invitation." Owen sounded puzzled and said, "Huh?" But I decided to tell him the truth. Why Owen thought he could get married after doing what he did was beyond me. Let's rewind to the time when Emily started living with us. After Emily moved in, the bullying had mostly stopped, but there was a day when Owen became physically violent toward me. It started because Owen was angry at Emily. Owen would take a lunchbox to work that Emily prepared for him. But one day, Emily overslept and couldn't make his lunch. Owen was furious about it. To me, it seemed like a minor issue. When Owen got home that day, I talked to him about the morning incident. Why get so mad over a missed lunch? Nobody's perfect. People oversleep sometimes, you know. I didn't mean anything deep by it. But Owen didn't like what I said and suddenly became enraged. A woman who's going to be my wife should be perfect at everything. It's your fault for being around and influencing her, he said. According to him, my presence was a bad influence on Emily. Of course, I argued back. I used to cry a lot as a kid, but now I speak my mind. We got into a heated argument, and suddenly, Owen shoved me. Then he started kicking me. Just then, Emily returned from shopping and intervened. She was angry at Owen, but Owen didn't calm down. And then I saw something unbelievable. Owen slapped Emily. He then left the house and disappeared. I was left stunned and couldn't move for a while. Emily was also frozen, holding her slapped cheek. Snapping back to reality, I approached Emily and asked, "Emily, are you okay?" She replied, "I'm fine." But tears were spilling from her eyes. She said sorry and retreated to her room. From that day on, Owen became increasingly aggressive toward Emily. One day, I decided to talk to Emily. I was worried because she was losing her usual brightness. Thinking a change of scenery might help, I took her outside, and she ended up confiding in me. She was unsure whether to go through with marrying Owen. I immediately said she should break it off, and that there was someone better out there for her. Emily seemed a bit surprised. Talking to me seemed to lift her spirits a bit. On the way home, I said to Emily, "I'll always be on your side, Emily." Emily cracked a small, somewhat sad smile. One day, I overheard Emily arguing with Owen, which was unusual for her. Curious, I asked what was going on. Turns out, Owen had gone ahead and set a wedding date without consulting her. No wonder Emily was upset. But what shocked me even more was this. Don't set a wedding date without even having a family meeting first. Apparently, Owen hadn't even met with Emily's parents yet. This was just beyond rude. And I was shocked he hadn't even taken the basic step. I immediately suggested that we go meet Emily's parents. Owen told me to mind my own business, but this was no time for that. Emily quickly explained the situation to her parents, and they both went to visit them. Her face looked both exhausted and tired, which worried me. That day, only Owen returned home. I had a hunch about what happened, and sent Emily a text. After a while, she replied, and we met up at a nearby cafe to discuss what had transpired. Long story short, her parents had objected to the marriage. I continued listening to the story, thinking that it must be so. I listened as she explained that Owen had set the wedding date without meeting them, and had been treating her poorly recently, so they couldn't allow their daughter to marry him. Yet Owen had already informed his workplace about the wedding date and even booked the venue, so he was in a tight spot now. I felt embarrassed for him. Emily's parents obviously didn't have a good impression of Owen. For the time being, Emily decided to stay at her parents' home to think things over. She said she wanted to think alone for a while. Owen objected, of course, but he was persuaded by her parents and returned home alone. I asked Emily if I could meet her parents. She was puzzled but agreed since I insisted. Later, I met with Emily's parents and apologized for Owen's rudeness. They were quite surprised, not just by the apology, but that someone as considerate as me could be related to Owen. I then shared everything about Owen, about Emily, and about how Owen had been treating her. And I asked Emily again, "Do you still want to marry Owen?" Emily responded, "I'm not sure." I suggested she should have a serious talk with Owen. She agreed, but when she tried to contact him to talk, Owen wasn't interested in discussing anything. Worse, he was still moving forward with the wedding plans. He even sent Emily a list asking her to prepare the invitations. At this point, Emily had had enough and finally decided to break up with Owen. She tried multiple times to discuss the matter with Owen, but it seemed like they could never have a real conversation. Every time she reached out, Owen would dominate the conversation and end it abruptly. She even texted him about breaking up, but Owen dismissed it, saying, "Enough with the jokes. Just prepare for the wedding." And so, the day Owen unilaterally decided would be their wedding day arrived, and Emily contacted me in a fury. I couldn't help but marvel at how well Owen had planned the wedding without giving it much thought, and I gave him a piece of my mind. You never took your conversations with Emily seriously, and honestly, I can't fathom why you think you can get married. No one's coming to this wedding. Plus, you quit your job without telling anyone? You've lost all credibility. With that, I hung up the phone. That's right, Owen had quit his job without telling anyone. Emily found out about this during an incident, and Owen had contacted her as well. Emily and I were together at the time, expecting his call. This is because I thought I would definitely get a call. What's going on? Why aren't you coming? Why isn't anyone coming? I've told you multiple times that I want to break up. You never listened. You even went ahead and planned a wedding, so I thought you might as well go ahead with it. Emily finally told Owen everything. She hadn't sent out invitations because she didn't want to get married. But he had told people at work about the date, so she contacted them to cancel the wedding to avoid causing them any inconvenience. That's when she first heard that Owen had quit his job. She intended to talk to Owen again, but given his usual attitude, she decided to let it go, saying, "Goodbye," and hung up. After hanging up, Emily looked relieved and refreshed. She apologized to me, but I was more than satisfied with the outcome. In the end, Owen had brought this upon himself. He never took his relationship with Emily seriously and made all the decisions on his own. If he had taken the time to have a serious conversation with Emily, things might have turned out differently. But that's neither here nor there now. Emily has been worried about living alone, but I had anticipated this and had already decided to move out and live on my own. I had even finalized the lease and just needed to move. Later, after moving, Emily and I continued to be as close as best friends. I told her I would miss her as if she were my sister, but she assured me there was no need to part ways. Since then, we've gone out for meals, hung out, and even traveled together. I spent my days working part-time, trying to find what I really wanted to do. Emily, being the incredibly capable and thoughtful person she is, also started a part-time job where I worked. Emily is the whole package: beautiful, talented, and incredibly considerate. She quickly became popular at work. One day, Emily mentioned she might be getting stalked by someone. Given how amazing she is, it wasn't surprising. Worried, I decided to accompany her home whenever possible. Then one day, it happened. Emily was attacked on her way home. I couldn't be with her that day because I was sick. I thought the stalker had given up, but it turns out they were just waiting for Emily to be alone. She was almost dragged into an alley, but a passerby happened to rescue her. Emily was surprised to see the person attacking her. It turned out to be my older brother, Owen. Owen was arrested. I heard about it the next day. During police questioning, Owen admitted he had been stalking Emily, waiting for an opportunity. He acted because I wasn't there to protect her. Hearing this broke my heart. As much as I despised Owen, I never thought someone from our own family would commit a crime. Emily was shocked, of course, but I was even more devastated. I apologized to Emily and her parents and thanked the person who saved her. Emily's parents were very kind to me. "If you don't mind, would you like to live with me?" But I decided to move out for now and return to my parents' house. It was empty now that Owen was arrested, but I couldn't bear to leave a house filled with memories of my parents and childhood. Emily suggested we could live there together. After some thought, I accepted her offer. So here we are, living together in my old home. Today, we're visiting my parents' graves. Emily came with me. In front of my parents' tombstones, I silently apologized for Owen's crime and my failure to stop him, all because I couldn't stand him.
My husband, Brian, is incredibly ambitious. His transition from a regional branch to the headquarters where I work appears to be fueled by a desire to climb the corporate ladder and become wealthy. This ambition made me wary of him. When we first met, Brian asked me, "Linda, your father is connected to our company, isn't he?" "Yes, I work for the company where my father serves as an executive." I've been viewed differently by people inside and outside the company because I have a relative in a position of power. However, time and time again, I've proven my worth through my skills and performance. In a way, my assertive nature might be suited for this type of environment. Despite my initial suspicion, Brian, being handsome and motivated, was a breath of fresh air compared to the all-talk men at headquarters. Working with Brian was enjoyable, and he was always proactive in his approach. I found myself gradually drawn to him. Brian proposed to me, saying, "Linda, with you, I can give my all in both work and home. I believe we can make a great couple. Will you marry me?" I responded with, "Are you sure? I might get so absorbed in work that I may not be able to cherish you. We both are career-oriented, so we spend less time together at home and go out or travel less than most couples. But we trust each other and enjoy our time together. Therefore, I was happy." However, this spring, it was decided that Brian would be transferred alone to a regional branch. Brian, who enjoyed working at headquarters, was deeply disappointed, and I felt it was unfair, given that we were newlyweds. However, I've heard that this is a crucial assignment that could lead to a promotion, and he should be able to return to the headquarters in about a year. With today's technology, we can video call via computer or smartphone. Given that we spend less time together anyway, we can manage our feelings of loneliness and distance. Besides, if I really miss him, I can always go visit. With this in mind, I saw off my husband with a smile. It's been about 3 months since Brian moved to the regional office. We video call each other once or twice a week to update each other on our lives. As I imagined, the world is convenient now, and if we carefully set aside time for long video calls, we don't feel lonely. "It seems like you're having fun there. I like to do things like visiting local attractions. Maybe I should come to visit during the summer vacation?" I casually mentioned, to which Brian responded with uncertainty. "Yeah, I'd love to see you, but they're working me non-stop. I'm not even sure if I'll get any summer vacation." "Oh, I see. Leading a project must be exhausting. Take care." I trust my husband's words, and I am saddened by that. Suddenly, I started to wonder about the interior of the apartment my husband Brian was renting, which was beyond his faith. I thought that maybe he couldn't clean properly because he's so busy. But, looking at the part of the room visible on the screen, it seemed surprisingly tidy. It's impressive how he manages to keep things neat and tidy, despite being so busy. I was about to compliment him on that when I noticed an unfamiliar bag at the edge of the screen and couldn't say anything. The bag was a woman's item. Even someone like me, who was not very up-to-date with trends, could tell at a glance that it was a high-end brand. "Hey, what's that bag?" I naturally pointed out. Brian took a quick glance over his shoulder and replied a bit flusteredly. Look, it's a wedding anniversary gift. We don't get to see each other much, right? But I wanted to make sure to give you something tangible at least. How is it? It has a beautiful shape, and it comes with a matching coin purse, which will be handy, right? I thought it would suit you. I ordered it online, so I wasn't sure about the condition. That's why I unboxed it. I wanted it to be a surprise, but I guess I messed up. I'm sorry." No, it's fine. I'm happy, and I'm looking forward to its arrival." No matter how you think about it, it's suspicious. The excuse seems plausible, but there is a sense of mistrust. But at that time, I couldn't confront him, because I still wanted to believe in Brian. Actually, the bag was indeed sent to me later, so it might have been rude to doubt him. The message card was filled with affectionate comments, and I was sincerely happy. However, despite having all this reassurance, I just couldn't erase the slight sense of distrust. I ended up not even taking the bag out of the box, and it's still in my closet. Several months have passed since then. On a day when I had gotten used to the life without Brian and to communicating via video calls, "Well, Brian, I should get going." Yeah. It's getting colder, so be careful not to catch a cold, Linda." I was about to say thank you and end the call when the doorbell at my house rang. "What's wrong?" Ah, a courier has arrived. You can hang up the call, Brian. See you later. Saying so, I got up and headed for the entrance. At the time, the thought of quickly receiving the package dominated my mind, so I couldn't even consider that I hadn't hung up the call, or that the screen was left on. When I got the package and went back to my room, my husband's face was still on the computer screen. I guess this is the end of the call. For some reason, Brian seemed to think that his side of the remote connection had been cut off, even though his image was still being displayed on my side. I was about to call out to him when an unbelievable sight appeared on the screen, and I instinctively covered my mouth with my hand. There was a bed on the other side of the desk where Brian's computer was, and an unknown woman was sitting on it. Despite being broad daylight, she was in a bathrobe. What's more, I noticed that the exact same bag I'd said was a present for a recent anniversary was lying under the bed. Memories of a suspicion I had almost forgotten began to resurface in my mind. Brian had indeed brought a woman into his apartment, and it wasn't just once or twice. The woman was casually playing with her smartphone on the bed, appearing completely accustomed to being in Brian's room. "Oh, you seem to be having so much fun chatting with your wife," the woman said with a cackle, as if to mock me, who was not present. "That might be true, but she's not here now," Brian replied, grinning without realizing that I was listening. "You're such a jerk. The real jerk is you, leaving your bag out in plain sight. I had to buy the same bag just to camouflage it. It was expensive, you know." "That's your own fault." "It's a shame that a luxury item like that is wasted on her. She has no sense of fashion." As they continued their playful banter, Brian and the woman lay down on the bed. I couldn't bear to watch any longer, so I shut down the computer. If I had to put my feelings into words, I would say I just felt regret. It seemed he had gifted me the bag as an anniversary present, but was it actually given to cover up his infidelity? "Brian, you're really the worst," I muttered, the insult slipping out before I could stop it. It's not something I really wanted to say. And that girl is... I also felt something familiar about the woman he was cheating with. I'm sure she's the daughter of the executive vice president who joined the company this year. The audacity to bring her all the way out to the country for a secret rendezvous? It seems like quite an elaborate affair. But somehow, it makes sense to me. I can't help but chuckle, thinking it's a typical choice for an ambitious man like Brian. After all, I too am the daughter of a high-ranking executive. It's just like Brian to pick a mistress who could prove useful in some way. Now, I can't believe in anything anymore. I thought he loved me, as a person. Just when I got tired of feeling angry, I started feeling like I couldn't forgive him now. So I decided to check the truth, and took action. A few days after that shocking video call, Brian suggested we spend some leisure time together. Perhaps he thought it would look bad if we didn't pretend to be friendly from time to time. I responded with an eager yes to his suggestion. Holding the purse that Brian had given me, I visited the apartment he had rented. "See, I keep it pretty clean, don't I? I'll go get us some iced tea." Watching Brian's back as he headed towards the kitchen, I saw my opportunity and took action. I quietly placed the coin purse that matched my bag inside the cupboard of Brian's computer desk. Unbeknownst to Brian, the coin purse contained a bug. It was a high-end model with excellent battery life, so it should continue to capture sounds for several days. Without any evidence, I wouldn't be able to complain. I assumed Brian would notice it, of course, but his mistress has the same one, too. Would he be able to distinguish who owns which? If he does distinguish them, I'll just have to find another way. If he doesn't, that's a win for me. I'm excited to see what kind of information I can gather. When the battery is about to die, I'll call Brian to confirm. "I seem to have lost the coin purse you gave me. Do you have it over there by any chance?" "Oh, yeah. It was wedged in the drawer of my desk. You're so clumsy." I guess Brian found the coin purse, but didn't open it. I could guess from his casual response. If I ask him to send it back because I need it right away, the coin purse will be back in my hands within a few days. Then, as I nervously played the audio, there it was, clear as day. My husband Brian and the daughter of the executive having an illicit affair, their voices engaged in an intimate conversation. Based on this data, I hired a private investigator and had him look into this. As he dug deeper, it turned out that Brian was involved with many more women, not just the executive's daughter. There were so many, I couldn't even count them all on one hand, and they included daughters of board members and department heads. As for me, I began to uncover aspects of Brian that I never knew before, as I started listening to his colleagues in his department. Apparently, Brian had been struggling with his performance recently and seemed to be quite stressed. Realizing that his efforts alone were no longer sufficient to achieve results, he must have shifted his focus from work to networking. I feel genuinely sorry for him. Failing to perform can be a hard pill to swallow. However, that has nothing to do with him betraying me and having affairs with other women. Moreover, he seems to be plotting to use these women as stepping stones to further his career. It's a despicable behavior, both as a man and as a professional. As I continued to investigate on my own, I felt my feelings for Brian quickly cooling off, and a feeling of vengeance began to sprout within me, for he had wounded my pride. Brian's work assignment away from home ended sooner than expected, before even a year was up. He returned home. To celebrate his return, I invited both of our parents and threw a home party. With a feast delivered to our door, lively music playing, and just family around, the atmosphere of our small party was quite jovial. Wait, the music's vibe has changed. And is that my voice? The speakers synced to the music player started blasting Brian's conversation with the executive's daughter throughout the house. Brian turned pale, confused, and flustered. "What's this, Linda?" I had already explained the situation to my parents. However, Brian's parents were in a state of panic, hearing their son's voice entangled with a woman they didn't recognize, and started to confront him. "Brian, what's the meaning of this?" "Surely you're not cheating on Linda." By playing the audio recordings of Brian's conversations with the other woman, which I obtained with the help of the investigator, Brian finally realized that I knew about his affairs. "Linda, you knew everything, didn't you?" Trembling, Brian turned to me with a question. With a smile, I responded, "Why not consider marrying the CEO's daughter next? That'll land you the CEO position in a snap. Though, considering that I've spread these recordings to all the other women you've been involved with, I'm not sure you'll be able to handle the job, even if you become CEO." At that, Brian clung to me, his face a picture of despair. "You also prefer a successful man on the fast-track promotion, right? It was a necessary step for my career. Please overlook it." "But what about us? Is our marriage also just a step towards your success?" "No, that's not it at all," he quickly replied. "You are special." Despite his words, Brian seemed flustered. When he was at a loss for words, my father stepped in and addressed him. "Brian, did you approach my daughter to take advantage of my position? Tell us the truth." In response to my father's earnest question, Brian confessed. "Initially, it was about getting ahead. Even though other women were merely tools for my advancement, I am truly serious about Linda. I promise I won't cheat again. Please forgive me this time. I want a chance to make it right." It was hard to judge whether he was lying or telling the truth. Yet, after such blatant infidelity, even when he claims that I'm the only special one, I find it hard to trust him. "It's not my place to decide," my father continued. "It's up to Linda. I can't even tell if you really mean what you're saying, but I can tell you this much. I despise you, and I can't accept you as my son-in-law." Even Brian's parents seemed doubtful of their son's honesty. "Brian, we want to believe in you, but we know that you've always had a strong desire to overcome your small-town upbringing and make it big in the city. That's why, even with all the evidence piled up against you, we find it hard to believe that Linda is truly special to you. Frankly, we regret the way we raised you. Even you guys?" While my father's words certainly had an impact, it seemed that the disbelief of his own parents hurt Brian the most. Regardless of what others said, the decision to trust Brian or not was ultimately up to me. I decided to be honest about my feelings. I cannot trust a man who has repeatedly lied to me, deceived me, and even ridiculed me with another woman. I love my work, and I appreciate professional success. But that's why I always want to achieve success on my own. I would never stoop so low as to use someone else for my gain. But I'm telling you that you're different. Why are you abandoning me? We're married, aren't we? If you really considered us to be married, if you truly cherished me, why would you give me the same handbag that you gave to the woman you're having an affair with? And on our anniversary, of all times. Stop making a fool of me. I don't want to share a family with a lazy man who depends on others to get ahead. I want a divorce." With those words, it seemed Brian had given up. His shoulders drooped, and he began to sniffle out of frustration. Well, he had just lost his most convenient stepping stone for his career, so it served him right. Exhausted, Brian was taken home by his parents. It was unlikely he would ever return to our home. Following through on my words, I divorced Brian. After I exposed Brian's wrongdoings to all the women involved, he was sued, not only by me, but also by all the women he had affairs with. Brian couldn't possibly pay all the settlement money with the money he had. He was forced to sell all his properties and even had to take on debt. Brian will probably lose his freedom for a while, paying back his debt. He voluntarily resigned from his company, but in reality, he was practically fired. Once the rumor of his actions reached the higher-ups, it was inevitable they would be furious. With rumors spreading around the office, he probably felt uncomfortable as well. Currently, he's working in a small factory he managed to find employment at, diligently paying back his debt. His parents told me about his situation when they came to apologize. As for me, I have no intentions of ever meeting him again. Of course, I received the alimony from Brian. As for the handbag, which was the same as his mistress's, I was surprised when I sold it for almost the same price as the new one, because it was barely used. It felt like a little bonus. After separating from Brian, I began to contemplate what marriage really meant, and what's important in life. What's most important to me might still be my work, just like before. However, it's not like I don't have dreams of having a family. I might use the money from selling the bag to pamper myself a bit, preparing for a new romance, as I had to work today.
Whew! Finally, finished all the work for this month. My name is Mary Jane. Ever since I was a kid, I love drawing. I started doing freelance illustration work while I was still a student. Thankfully, I've been able to make a living as a freelance illustrator even after entering the workforce. Besides illustrations, I'm also grateful to be drawing some women's comics for specialized websites. According to my editor, my work is pretty well received. I met my husband Bruno through my job. He worked at the publishing company that I was associated with. At first, we were just professional acquaintances, but we bonded over the fact that both of us had lost our dads in accidents when we were kids. Eventually, we started going out for meals together and began dating after he confessed his feelings for me. Are you sure you want to be with someone like me? I'm pretty plain, and the only thing I'm good at is drawing.
Don't say that. I think you're incredibly talented, Mary Jane. I love how hardworking you are.
Even now, thinking back on it makes me blush a bit. But that's what he said. I had never dated anyone before, so I didn't have much self-confidence. But hearing him say that made me think that maybe it's okay to like myself a little more. His confession meant a lot to me. After dating for about 2 years, we got married. For a while after our wedding, we enjoyed our newlywed life in a newly rented condo. Both of us are in our late 20s, so we started thinking about having kids sooner rather than later. One day I was thinking about this. Then one day the topic of living with my mother-in-law came up.
Mom wants to live with us. What do you think, Mary Jane?
Your mom lives alone at her place, right?
Yeah, I know it's a bit awkward to bring this up so soon after getting married.
Apparently, it was my mother-in-law's idea. I had only met her a few times before the wedding, but she seemed youthful and very kind. Normally, the idea of living with a mother-in-law might make someone a bit cautious. But having lost my dad at a young age and living just with my mom, I've always been interested, even longing for a larger family. So I said, maybe she's feeling a bit lonely living alone. You used to visit her often before we got married, right? But that's less frequent now.
Yeah, you might be right. I'm really sorry. I should have been more attentive.
Why are you apologizing? I don't mind living with her.
Really? Are you sure?
Yes, I think it will be more fun for all of us if she lives with us.
Thank you, Mary Jane.
And so I agreed to live with my mother-in-law. My husband seemed relieved and very happy about my decision. About 6 months after our wedding, our new life with my mother-in-law began. Mary Jane, is there anything you don't like to eat? I can cook anything you want. Thank you, but I'll help with the cooking. No need, just relax. My mother-in-law was thrilled about the living arrangement and took care of most of the household chores like cooking, cleaning, and laundry. I felt a bit guilty for letting her do all the work, but given my job and constant deadlines, her help was a godsend. Just when I thought our life was going smoothly, my husband dropped a bombshell.
Mary Jane, I'm sorry, I've been suddenly transferred to a different region.
What? It seems he's been assigned to work in a different region for a few years. The news was so sudden that my mind went blank for a moment. Even though I knew that transfers are part and parcel of his job, we had just started living with my mother-in-law, and it hadn't even been a month yet. Of course, my mother-in-law and I are not related by blood. I think the reason our current living situation is going well is largely because my husband acts as a mediator. Suddenly, it's just me and my mother-in-law. Can I really handle this? To be honest, that thought crossed my mind. However, it felt heartless to suggest ending our living arrangement just because my husband would be away. I considered going with him, but staying near the city seems like it would offer more opportunities for my career. My husband must have noticed my internal struggle. He apologized multiple times, saying,
I'm really sorry this happened so suddenly. I'll talk to Mom about it.
I don't want to make things difficult for my husband, and I do have some affection for my mother-in-law since we're living together. So I decided to continue living with her. But maybe that was naive of me. For a while, she was kind to me. But about a month after my husband left, her attitude changed dramatically. Mary Jane, instead of lazing around, how about helping with the chores? I'm not lazing around, I'm working, Mom. What? You're just doodling on that board. There's no way you're making money from that. It's not a board, it's a tablet PC. She misunderstood my work-from-home job as unemployment. Now, she complains daily about what I should be doing. Don't think you can fool me with your fancy words.
Aren't you ashamed of dumping all the housework on me?
I'm grateful for your help, but I also contribute $3,000 a month to the household from my income.
What? That money is from my son who's worried about me. How could an unemployed person like you afford that?
No, you see, as I mentioned earlier, because I can help with chores due to my work, my husband and I agreed that I would contribute a significant amount from my income. I don't think money solves everything, so I help with chores when I can, but she just doesn't get it. Didn't seem to want to understand. No matter how politely I tried to talk to her, it was no use. No matter how many times I tried to explain, she shuts me out. My mom-in-law hostility escalated, and she started calling me names like
Failure, parasite,
and
unemployed.
she doesn't work. She's a housewife. She stays home most days, although she occasionally goes out. I'm financially supporting her, and this is how she treats me? Honestly, it's getting to me. I've even missed work deadlines because she forced me to help with chores, causing inconvenience to my clients and leading to apologetic phone calls. If this continues, I lose their trust. And then, one day, my brother-in-law and his wife came over, summoned by my mother-in-law.
We heard from Mom you're holed up in your room all day, just doodling?
Seriously, how old are you? That's so lame. You're such a nerd.
My brother-in-law has a flashy appearance in a sly demeanor so different from my husband that it's hard to believe they're related. I've never liked him, even before we got married. His wife, my sister-in-law, wears heavy makeup and has a smirk on her face.
Mother-in-law, we're tired of living with Mary Jane,
they say.
We're moving in, so get lost. You're unemployed, bum.
They look down on me and insult me freely, and my mother-in-law watches with a malicious grin. I'm frustrated with his family that doesn't even try to understand me. But I can't afford to get involved right now. I have a deadline to meet, and I need to finish my artwork. I keep telling myself this as I continue working, but it seems my mother-in-law isn't amused.
What's with that smug face? You think you're so cute? I'll take care of that tablet of yours.
Wait, Mom! She snatches my tablet PC and smashes it on the floor, then starts stomping on it. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law join in.
Serves you right. Let me stop on it too, Mom.
Me too. This is hilarious.
They keep stomping, again and again.
Please stop.
I beg, but by the time they are satisfied, my tablet is shattered, the screen broken, and the internal components scattered. Obviously, I can't work like this. I've had enough. They better brace themselves. I've reached my limit, and I decide to move out. When I call my husband to tell him what happened, he's speechless for a moment before apologizing profusely. I don't blame him, though. I tell him I want to live with him in his rural apartment, and he readily agrees. I used to think living in the countryside wasn't ideal for my career, but now, being with my husband is what matters most. He offers to confront his mother and siblings, but I ask him to wait. I have a plan. I start preparing to move, eager to leave this house as soon as possible. But then my mother-in-law and her obnoxious kid show up, looking artificially remorseful. What do you want? I'm busy.
We didn't know you were contributing $3,000 a month.
Yeah, we heard from our son. You've been very considerate. I've been saying that from the start.
I realize what they're up to. They probably figured out they won't get any more money if I leave. But why my brother-in-law is involved? I have no idea.
Don't go. It will be lonely. We'll let you stay even if we move in.
If you leave, Mom says we have to contribute $3,000 a month. We can't afford that.
It's your fault she's leaving. You broke her tablet.
What? Mom started it.
We're not to blame.
They start arguing among themselves, looking more pathetic by the minute. To be honest, I couldn't care less. As I was quietly packing my things, my mother-in-law came up to me. "Please, Mary Jane, I won't be able to make it without your help. You still send money even if you move out, right?" I couldn't help but laugh.
Why would I? If I were not living together, I have no intention of giving you a single dollar.
What?
Besides, what do you mean you can't make it? I've been giving you more than enough to save more money. What have you been spending it on?
Well, that is...
She's hesitated, but finally blurted out.
I've been spending it on a man.
I was speechless.
A man? What are you thinking, Mom?
I was lonely. Please, Mary Jane, help me keep supporting him. If you feel sorry for a widow like me.
Are you kidding? No way.
Even if I find it hard to stomach, Mom?
Muttering about how terrible and mean I was, my mother-in-law slumped in defeat. I guess she was really looking forward to seeing her man. There's no helping her now.
"Look, Mary Jane, we're sorry for the trouble. Let's forget the past and live happily together, okay?"
No thanks. I have no intention of supporting you guys.
My brother-in-law tried to apologize in a condescending manner, but I brushed it off and continued packing. I moved out and joined my husband in his new location. Now, I'm enjoying a peaceful life in this small city. I was working quietly when I wondered how many revenge was going. Just then, my mother-in-law called.
Hello? Mom-in-law? Long time no see.
Mary Jane, you've caused a huge mess. We're in big trouble now.
What are you talking about?
Don't play dumb. It's about the comic you wrote.
Ah,
Apparently, the comic I drew has turned their lives into a living hell. The comic was my revenge. I posted it on social media, detailing how they mistreated and insulted me. It resonated with women my age and became quite popular, especially among Japanese readers. Although I didn't use their real names, some relatives who knew I drew a comic recognized the story. Now, those relatives are confronting my mother-in-law and her children.
What do we do now? Everyone knows I've been supporting a man.
Well, that's good. Now you don't have to hide it.
I can't see him anymore. Please, Mary Jane,
Smooth things over for us. No way. Why would I bother with that? Handle it yourself.
no.
Her scream echoed from the other end of the line. Hearing it, I felt I'd gotten a little bit of my own back. After it came to light that the selfish mom-in-law had racked up a debt to lavish gifts on a man, she was confronted by furious relatives. The amount was so large that she couldn't possibly pay it back on her own, leading to the sale of the family home. Now, mother-in-law is scrambling to pay off the remaining debt while juggling a job she's not used to. As for my brother and his wife, they'd moved into a cheap apartment, but their lack of money has led to constant arguments. You'd think they'd just leave, but apparently, they'd also in debt and can't afford to live on their own. My sister-in-law got fed up with this lifestyle and left after having an affair. Well, I do feel sorry for my brother-in-law. It's hard not to think he had it coming. I know it's a bit harsh to say, but I think even my husband would agree. On the other hand, my husband and I are thoroughly enjoying our life in the countryside. Being free from the stress of living with others has been a game changer. And we were blessed with our first child shortly after moving here. This peaceful area, surrounded by nature, suits us perfectly, making our initial worries about leaving the city seem silly. With a comfortable work environment, my career is also on the upswing. I'm more motivated than ever to work hard, especially for a child who's on the way. Thanks to the positive reception of my recent comic, I've even landed a new serial publication, so both my personal and professional lives are going great.
Should I actually be thanking my troublesome mother-in-law and her clan for giving me this opportunity to grow?
I'm Chloe, 34 years old, and I live with my husband Ethan, who's a year older than me, and our daughter Mia, who's about to turn 5. We are a family of 3. For some reason, I have been running into troublesome situations quite frequently over the past few years. Take, for instance, when Mia had just started walking. She would change her mind constantly, wanting to walk by herself one moment and be carried the next. I was hurrying home from the supermarket dealing with her whims. Suddenly, a woman walking towards us stopped us, claiming that my child had stepped on her foot as we passed by. I was shocked and apologized, but the woman wasn't satisfied. She told me not to let my child walk alone if I couldn't control her. Trying to keep things calm, I kept apologizing, but then she started demanding money for shoe cleaning and medical treatment for her foot. However, I had been careful to pull my daughter's hand towards me to avoid colliding with the woman who had walked straight towards my daughter. I was reluctant to pay, sensing something off, and people began to stop and watch us, as it was evening and the street was fairly busy. Shall I call the police? A kind-looking high school girl offered to help just as Ethan, who was on his way home, called out to me from behind. "Chloe, what's going on?" As I began to explain the situation to Ethan, the woman quickly left, perhaps realizing she was at a disadvantage now that my husband was there. "It's a good thing I came home on time today. You were really unlucky." "Indeed, I'm glad you were there, Ethan. Thank you." Another incident happened on a different day. It was a holiday morning and I left Mia with Ethan to go to the bakery. A woman appeared as if she had been waiting for me and persistently demanded that I hand over what I had bought. Ethan happened to be following me as Mia had begged him to, and he arrived just in time to fend her off. That was scary. I'm so glad Ethan came.
"You really are unlucky, Chloe. I can't always be there to help you, so be careful."
I often find myself being followed by strange women, but I feel very reassured to have Ethan bravely fend them off. Today, I'm driving to my parents' house. Ethan loves Mia and me, and we usually go out as a family, but unfortunately, he has to stay home this time. Every year, we spend New Year's Eve at my in-laws' house, and then visit my parents, but Ethan's work has been piling up, and we have had to postpone our visit, so Mia and I are going alone. I talked to my daughter, who's sitting in the booster seat. I reattached to the front seat for today. Daddy's missing out, huh? Grandma said she bought lots of strawberries because she knows you and Daddy love them. Will Grandma give us some to take home? Sure, if Mia doesn't eat them all. Our girls' drive is filled with talk about Ethan. After driving for a while, we parked the car in a convenience store parking lot. We used the restroom and bought orange juice and a small bag of biscuits, which are my daughter's recent favorite snacks. She's planning to share them with Grandpa and holds them carefully as we return to the car. Mia, do you want to drink some juice now? It's dangerous to do it while the car is moving. I spoke to my daughter before fastening her booster seatbelt. However, my daughter shakes her head, saying that the biscuits are a gift for father and the juice is for mother. I am pleased with her thoughtfulness and offer her some water I brought from home instead. After giving her a drink, I settle back into my seat ready to depart when I notice my shoelace has come undone. Oh, wait a minute, honey. Mommy's shoe was about to come off. I get out of the car to retie my shoelace. I also take the opportunity to stretch my tired body from the long drive before getting back into the car, where I find my daughter quietly looking at something in her hands. Mia? When I call her, I see that she's holding the dash cam. It came off. She's been playing with it and the recorder is playing back today's car ride at double speed. I told you this isn't a toy. I try to stop it but press the wrong button since I usually don't check the footage. The image switches and Ethan appears on the small monitor. Oh, I made a mistake. Daddy's on there, but I wonder when this was. As I casually look at the screen and reach for another button, an unfamiliar male enters the car in the video, and the conversation that follows is shocking. What does this conversation mean? I stop the playback and suggest to my daughter that we take a little break, putting on an anime DVD that's still in the navigation system. After confirming that she's happily watching her favorite anime, I nervously play the dashcam footage again, listening to the conversation between Ethan and an unknown male on a day he was supposed to be at work. After watching everything, I change our destination from my parents' house to the nearby police station and rush there. A surprised police officer checks the dashcam footage with me and advises that it's not yet time to take action but suggests that I take the matter seriously and take refuge at my parents' house for a while. I'm told to consult them if anything changes, and I head to my parents' house with an unsettled heart. Originally, we planned to stay for 2 nights to coincide with my daughter's preschool, but after explaining the situation to my parents, we continue to stay. As the days go by, messages from Ethan pile up, but I follow my father's advice and don't respond. Once everything is ready, I time it for when Ethan should be home from work and call him. I tell him I have something to discuss and invite him to a restaurant owned by a friend of my father's, which we have reserved for the evening.
Good evening.
Ethan opened the door to a restaurant where only a reserved sign is displayed and seems a bit relieved when our eyes meet. But he soon seems puzzled that it's just my father and me and our daughter isn't with us. He takes a seat at my father's urging, but there's no sign of any staff and even water isn't served. The strange atmosphere seems to make Ethan a bit nervous and he looks around the restaurant. I have no room to notice such things, and with a voice that's almost trembling, I say to Ethan, "Please, divorce me."
What?
Ethan, suddenly confronted with a demand for divorce, shows confusion and refusal, apparently having no idea why.
A divorce? What's going on all of a sudden? Did I do something? I have no idea what you're talking about.
I already feel fear just facing Ethan like this, and I can't look him straight in the eye. But I've asked my father to watch over us as much as possible, as I want to talk to Ethan myself to make him understand. Feeling my father's watchful gaze, I pull my mobile phone out of my pocket. Can you look at this? The dashcam footage from the car is displayed on it. Ethan starts watching the video with a puzzled look, and when he realizes what it is, he falls silent. In the quiet restaurant, the conversation between Ethan and an unknown male plays from the mobile phone.
You really don't have to hit her. Just threaten her a bit and she'll easily get scared. What if you really hit her? Don't worry, you can do that. I'll join you later and invite you to dinner. So just approach her in the family restaurant's parking lot. When Chloe takes out her mobile phone or you grab her collar, I'll run in like I just arrived.
Ethan, in the recording, occasionally smiles but continues to talk seriously. This man who is instructing an unknown male to attack my daughter and me, and even planning the scenario where he comes to our rescue, is my husband sitting right in front of me. Realizing this again, I finally start to tremble. Moreover, from the conversation, I understand that this wasn't the first time my husband had instructed someone to harass us. In fact, the strange women who had bothered us before were also sent by Ethan, all part of a scheme to raise his own stock by conveniently rescuing us in our time of need. Recently, we had started to get used to being harassed by women, even imitating Ethan's method of repelling them, so now he had sent a man to save us from even greater fear, apparently to further boost his reputation. From the footage, I knew that the plan was for the day we were to return from our visit, so we had been staying at my parents' house all this time. Ethan finishes watching the video in silence, then rests his chin on his hand deep in thought. Seeing that he doesn't move, my father quietly opens his mouth.
Do you have anything to say?
Then Ethan slowly lifts his face and lets out a thin sigh.
Chloe, what are you trying to do by creating this video? Father-in-law, this is a fabrication. The voice does sound like mine, but I don't know this man, and the content is baseless. Come to think of it, you've been harassed by strange women before. You must be having some weird delusions from stress. I should have been more careful with you.
Ethan bows his head slightly to my father. I exchange glances with my father and sigh. We will submit this footage as evidence to the police. Ethan has always been kind to us, but there have been many times when I felt he was just putting on a facade. So I expected him to try to deceive us somehow and win over my father, and that's exactly what happened. Hearing my clear declaration, Ethan's attitude changes instantly.
The police? Don't mess with me. Are you trying to ruin my life?
With a loud crash, the chair falls over. Ethan, who has stood up, draws back his fist to strike me. The moment I brace myself, my father and his friend, who had been hiding and waiting, grab Ethan and restrain him. More men who were hiding in the restaurant appeared one after another, and Ethan quickly became subdued due to their overwhelming presence. Actually, the reason we chose this restaurant for the discussion was at my father's suggestion, and the owner, who is a friend of my father's, had offered to help. The owner, a retired police officer who opened the restaurant, is not only strong himself, but also has many well-built acquaintances. In case Ethan tried to carry out his plan in front of my father and send the male to attack, they were ready to subdue Ethan even before he made his move. And they were also prepared to act as witnesses to make the divorce proceedings go smoothly. I am truly grateful to everyone who helped me, as I had never been subjected to violence before and wouldn't have been able to respond on the spot. Afterward, Ethan, surrounded by my father's friends, reluctantly signed the divorce papers I presented to him, unable to resist or deceive any longer. I later reported Ethan's behavior during our discussion to the police, but contrary to my expectations, their response was slow. Since I wasn't actually hit and the only evidence of Ethan's planned scheme was the dashcam footage, and it was also an attempted crime, there was no satisfactory result from the consultation. Given the difficulty of explaining the victimization and the fact that it was an incident between a married couple, I was unable to obtain a satisfactory result from the consultation, even though I was able to get a divorce. Furthermore, I was given the runaround, having to explain the same situation to different officers and finally being told to consult at the police station in my home jurisdiction. Completely worn out, I gave up and decided to return to my parents' house. As I was about to open the door to my parents' house in despair, I was pulled back with great force. Stumbling and turning around, I found Ethan standing there.
If you do just come back, everything will be back to normal. I won't tolerate any more selfishness.
Ethan forcefully pulled me, trying to get me into his car. As I shouted and resisted desperately, my mother, suspicious of the noise, came out to see what was happening. Then Ethan, noticing her, went into the house without even looking at her and tried to take our daughter. As my daughter and I were about to be forcibly shoved into the car and we resisted along with my mother, a neighbor must have called the police and an officer arrived. But Ethan, either already enraged or unafraid, struck the approaching officer, trying to calm him down. As a result, he was arrested for assault, violent behavior, and obstruction of law enforcement. And we had to visit the police station again that day to explain the situation. Although we were released immediately, Ethan would probably be in police custody for about 10 days. So I hurriedly arranged the move I had been planning and applied for personal information protection at the city office. My parents also decided to give up their home, whose location was known, and move to a rental property owned by my grandfather. Thus, a series of events that unexpectedly came to light with Ethan's arrest finally settled down. Ethan initially claimed during the investigation that he wanted to protect my daughter and me, that he wanted to be our hero, but the woman he had sent to harass us denied this when questioned. They said it was all part of his self-promotion. Ethan, the youngest of 6 siblings, apparently had rarely had things go his way since he was little. That's why after getting married and starting a family, he wanted to reign supreme, to have complete control over his wife and daughter. In the end, all the talk of being a hero was just lip service. He was only thinking about creating an image of himself as a protector, someone his family could rely on. His real goal was to control us by saying he would protect us, so we should obey him. Even his kindness to my daughter and me was all just to boost how others saw him. There was no love for us, just a terrifying realization that we were merely props in his performance. Now I truly feel relieved that I have gotten away from him. Ethan was later only found guilty of obstructing official duties, although I was dissatisfied that only the charge against the police officer was acknowledged. In the end, Ethan was arrested, so there was no one else to tell. Then a father's friend said,
What if the husband had intended to harm his wife and children, not just kidnap them? We couldn't get any cooperation in advance, but what if the children had been taken away because we were late this time? What if another incident occurred while we were passing the buck? Are we going to ignore something that could be prevented if no actual harm has occurred?
Thanks to the warning to the active junior police officers, I feel a bit better now. Now my daughter and I are free from strange women, starting fresh and enjoying our life as a mother and daughter in a new place. My daughter seems to think that Ethan is just staying at the old house because he's busy with work, but when she's older, I plan to tell her about the divorce, keeping the details hidden. Peaceful days without the ex-husband knowing our information? The days ahead with my daughter will surely be wonderful. My name is Amelia. I'm a 40-year-old housewife. My husband Charlton is 35, and we have been married for 5 years. We are a happy couple, just the two of us. I grew up with just my dad, who worked a corporate job after my mom passed away when I was young. I was always worried that if I got married, my dad would be left alone. Even when I was dating someone, I hesitated to take the plunge into marriage. Whenever I talked about my hesitation, people would say it's because I'm a daddy's girl who loves her father too much. That's when I met my current husband. He understood how much I care for my dad and even said he would be okay with us living with him. That sealed the deal, and I decided to marry him. My dad was thrilled when I told him the news.
I am so happy. Now I can face your mother in heaven. Don't worry about me, just focus on being happy with Charlton. Charlton, please, take good care of my daughter. Make her happy, especially because she has had to struggle with just one parent.
My dad had never said it, but he had been worried that my being raised by a single parent might be a reason for me not getting married. He also runs a real estate agency while working his corporate job. We received a new house as a wedding gift from my dad and lived happily. Then, 2 years ago, my dad retired at 65. After retiring, he seemed to lose his energy and seemed to age rapidly. So I started calling him every day and visiting him regularly to check on him. My husband's work schedule changed, leading to more overtime, so I started visiting my dad even more. One day, I couldn't reach my dad at the usual time, so I went to check on him. I found him collapsed in the bathroom. I called an ambulance immediately, but he never regained consciousness. Tests revealed he had suffered a brain hemorrhage and was hospitalized. I visited him every day, but he never woke up and eventually passed away. I held back my tears as I said my final goodbyes and began arranging the funeral. The funeral was a small family affair, but some relatives showed up claiming they were promised inheritance. Thankfully, my dad had left a will in my name, so I inherited all his savings and properties. I felt my dad's love even after he was gone, and it filled my heart. I had no idea that more challenges were yet to come. My husband's family is generally sensible, but there is one sister-in-law who's terrible with money. Hey, Amelia, you inherited from your dad, right? We're sisters now, even if it's by marriage. Help me out, I'm in trouble. She's been in debt and has been asking for money quite shamelessly. I've been turning her down, but it's getting stressful. Then one day, I received an email. It was an invitation to a class reunion. As I was pondering whether to attend the class reunion, my husband Charlton spoke up.
What's got you looking so serious?
There's a class reunion coming up, but I'm not really in the mood, especially after Dad passed away.
Maybe it will be a good change of pace. Your dad wouldn't want you to be down all the time.
You're right. Encouraged by my husband, I decided to go to the reunion. When the day arrived, I was enjoying catching up with old friends. While I was alone getting a new drink, a classmate approached me.
Amelia, long time no see.
Sorry? Who are you?
Ouch, don't recognize me, I'm Cody.
I couldn't quite remember him, but he seemed to know me.
Wanna catch up?
Just then, one of my old friends called out, Amelia, where's that drink? Snapping back to reality, I said, sorry, my friends are waiting, and left. My friend quickly approached me looking concerned. Are you okay? Did that guy bother you? No, we were just talking. He said his name was Cody, but who is he? He's that unreliable playboy from the baseball team. Good looking and athletic, remember? Oh, right. He looks different now, so I didn't recognize him. Be careful, he's still a playboy. And he was eyeing you. Come on, I'm married. I'm not exactly young anymore. I laughed it off then, but Cody kept trying to engage me. I managed to avoid him until the end of the first part of the reunion, but then he cornered me.
Why are you avoiding me, Amelia? It hurts. Are you maybe interested in me?
Don't be ridiculous.
Why so defensive? Just be honest.
I'm married, you know.
So, plenty of married people still play around. Plus, I have always liked you. How about we go for drinks?
No, thank you. If you want to drink, go to the after party. I managed to shake him off and caught a taxi home. I thought that would be the last of Cody, but more trouble was waiting for me. The next day, while I was working at the cafe, where I have a part-time job, a familiar man walked in. As I approached with a glass of water, I realized it was Cody. What are you doing here?
Just a coincidence. Lucky me, running into Amelia.
Don't lie. Who told you?
Relax, let me place an order first. 1 blended coffee.
Reluctantly, I took his order and made his coffee. Leave after you finish this.
It says all limited refills during this time. I'll take my time.
After Cody took his sweet time chatting and sipping 3 cups of coffee, he finally paid his bill.
Just so you know, I'll be a regular here from now on,
he said, ignoring the atmosphere. I couldn't exactly kick out a customer, so I found myself serving Cody every day. I tried talking to my manager, but without any real harm done, there was nothing they could do. I wanted to consult my husband, but he was swamped with work and rarely home. Then, on a day off from my part-time job, I returned from shopping to a shocking sight.
Welcome back, Amelia. You're late.
Cody was at my house. How did you find out where I live?
Who knows? Maybe we're just fated to be together?
Stop being creepy and leave.
Why not ditch your workaholic husband and be with me? I'll treat you right.
Cody tried to put his arm around me. A chill ran down my spine and I had had enough. I pushed him away. Days later, my sister-in-law visited while my husband was home. We need to talk, they both said, looking serious.
You have been acting strange since the reunion. You're seeing another man, aren't you?
What are you talking about?
Don't play dumb. We have evidence.
Sister-in-law flipped over the envelope she was holding. Out spilled a bunch of photos of me hanging out with a guy named Cody. Pictures from a recent reunion, some from my workplace, and even one where Cody had his arm around me in front of my house. The photos were cleverly taken to look like we were having secret meetings. If you only saw these, you would think I was cheating for sure.
This is irrefutable evidence. We're getting a divorce and you owe me $50,000. Pay up all at once.
My husband and sister-in-law were smirking. It was clear they were trying to frame me for cheating. I decided to play along. Fine, if you insist on a divorce, let's do it. Don't worry about the settlement or alimony. I'll handle it all properly. At my words, my husband and sister-in-law exchanged triumphant glances. But I had no intention of letting them off the hook. From here on out, I will push both of you into hell. Oh, by the way, the inheritance I got from my dad isn't part of the marital assets.
What?
My husband and sister-in-law were stunned. My husband was the first to come to his senses.
Why not? Money earned after marriage is supposed to be split evenly.
True, for money we have earned while married. But inheritance from my deceased parents isn't something we acquired together, so it's not part of the settlement. Didn't know that, did you? Too bad for you.
What?
How do I know all this? Cody told me everything. Turns out I had consulted the police the day Cody showed up at my house. Cody got scared after a warning from the police and spilled the beans the next day.
I'm really sorry. My coworker just asked me to seduce Amelia, that's all.
Cody deeply apologized and spilled everything he knew. Turns out Cody was a junior colleague of my sister-in-law at work. My sister-in-law had heard about a reunion from her husband and said,
Cody, you went to school with my sister-in-law, right? Set a honey trap for her. If my brother and his wife divorce, we'll get some money from the settlement. I'll give you a cut if it works.
Cody got manipulated by sister-in-law and started getting close to me, while they took photos to document it. They were trying to blackmail me with these fabricated proofs of infidelity.
Oh, wait a minute. You're saying I set this guy up? How can you prove it without any evidence?
Sister-in-law denied it. I have evidence. Take a look at this. I showed them my phone screen. I had saved the text exchanges between Cody and sister-in-law and separately the text between sister-in-law and my husband. The text read,
I was so surprised to bump into you in front of the hotel.
Me too. Keep my girlfriend a secret.
Of course. You keep quiet about the guy I was with too.
Deal.
Your girlfriend is stunning. How did you meet her?
She is a co-worker in my department. We met after a transfer. I'm so happy after being with her every day.
You're bold, cheating so openly and not getting caught.
If I say it's over time, Amelia doesn't ask more. She has been so down since her father passed. I couldn't stand it otherwise.
Wow. Poor Amelia.
Actually, I want to divorce Amelia and marry her.
I have an idea. Let's make it look like Amelia cheated. Even if she doesn't fall for the honey trap, we'll have the photos and evidence. We can get compensation and a share of the inheritance. Both my husband and sister-in-law panicked after seeing the saved text. How did you get this? Charlton, what does her mean? Sister-in-law, you're engaged and you're cheating too? You think I would cheat just because you are?
Give me that phone. Delete it now.
My husband tried to snatch the phone from my hand. Oops, my hand slipped. I narrowly managed to forward the screenshots of the text exchanges to someone. My husband looked at the phone screen he had just snatched from me, his face drained of color.
You've got to be kidding. Dad?
Hurry up, long press the image and cancel the message. Both were panicking, but in the meantime, my father-in-law had already read the message. Realizing that I had accidentally forwarded the SMS screenshots to father-in-law, my husband and sister-in-law turned pale. Soon after, my phone rang. It was father-in-law. Charlton, you messed up, so you answer it.
No way. That was your idea, sis. You take responsibility.
My husband and sister-in-law were pushing my phone back and forth. Finally, sister-in-law said, "You deal with it," and handed me back the phone. I answered and explained everything to father-in-law. That night, a family meeting was called at my in-laws' house. As expected, my husband and sister-in-law got an earful. You both cheated and tried to frame an innocent woman? Shame on you.
We owe a lot to Amelia's father. How dare you betray that trust?
My usually calm mother-in-law looked disgusted and father-in-law was furious. Turns out, my dad and father-in-law had a long-standing business relationship and my dad had helped father-in-law in times of need. Father-in-law turned to me and bowed deeply.
I'm so sorry for my foolish daughter and son. I don't know how to apologize.
After that, I decided to seek compensation from sister-in-law, my husband, and Cody through a lawyer. Despite the pending divorce and compensation, my husband packed his bags and left, going off the grid. I had a private investigator look into it and found out he had run off to his mistress's house. I was dumbfounded. I sent documents demanding compensation for adultery to both their workplaces. As a result, my husband and his cheating partner were in a bad position within the company, and my husband was relegated to another department. This led to my husband being demoted and his mistress, who was part-time, getting fired. While investigating my husband, I also had sister-in-law's affairs looked into. Turns out, she had not one but two lovers. I informed her fiancé and my in-laws and sent them the evidence. Naturally, sister-in-law's engagement was called off and she was also sued for compensation. Afterwards, my husband and sister-in-law turned to their parents for help, but they refused and cut ties. They never thought their plan to frame me for cheating would backfire like this. Thanks to my lawyer, the divorce went through smoothly. While I felt relief, I also realized I was now alone, especially since my dad had passed away. I thought I would be lonely, but thanks to my supportive friends and my former in-laws, who had been incredibly kind, I'm doing surprisingly well. Every now and then, my ex-husband reaches out. His messages are either about wanting to get back together, saying things like, "You're the only one for me," or asking for loans. I ignore them and send screenshots to father-in-law each time. My ex gets scolded by father-in-law again. Does he not have a learning function in his brain? Maybe he doesn't have a brain at all. Since then, Cody has stopped showing up at the cafe where I work. Now that I'm divorced and don't have to worry about anything, I have decided to work there as a full-time employee. Moving forward, I plan to manage the inheritance my dad left me while working harder than ever.
It's 10 a.m. on a Saturday. Recently, every week around this time, I start to get a headache. All thanks to her. The doorbell rings punctually again today. I can only watch as my husband happily goes to open the door. "I'm home!" Just kidding. We're like newlyweds, huh? "You're late! Come in!" "Hey! Tea! You're so unhelpful!" My husband, supporting the woman's shoulder, jeers at me. My precious weekend is always consumed by them. My name is Karen, a 24-year-old working housewife. I work in a general position during weekdays. My husband Mike and his childhood friend Lisa are the same age as me, 24. They grew up in the same town and reconnected at a reunion 6 months ago. It's clear from his photo albums that they grew up like siblings. What lingers between them is not romance. I can sense that from their interactions. The issue is, Lisa clearly harbors hostility towards me. The story goes back to their student days. Mike liked Lisa since they were children. However, despite his constant attempts, his feelings never bore fruit, and he met me in college. As we took the same classes and started to interact more, Mike naturally distanced himself from Lisa. Then one day, Lisa came to us with a man by her side. She looked at me smugly before saying this to Mike with upturned eyes. "We're getting married! I'm sorry, Mike, I couldn't reciprocate your feelings." Her insinuation, as if Mike had settled for me because he couldn't have Lisa, rubbed me the wrong way. However, I decided it wouldn't do any good to make a scene, so I kept quiet. Mike, by the way, can be quite clueless. Even then, that hadn't changed, and he cheerfully told Lisa, "Really? Congratulations! Actually, we're planning to get married after graduation too." Lisa, with her mouth agape, was taken aback by Mike, who didn't even show a hint of sadness. In a way, her reaction was justified. A guy who had always been fond of her suddenly started dating another woman as soon as he entered college, not even giving her a second glance. Moreover, when I declared that I was getting married, it didn't affect Mike at all. From Lisa's perspective, she probably wanted to hear words like, "I still love you," or "Please don't get married," from Mike. Even if there's no romantic feelings involved, it still hurts a woman's pride. "Huh? Don't you have anything else to say?" To Lisa's query, Mike responded without any sense of shame. "Huh? Something to say? Ah, right! Karen! She's an incredible cook. I've never tasted anything as good as the meals Karen makes. And she's super kind, and she even helps me with my studies." While Lisa glared at me, her fiancé looked back with a puzzled face. I couldn't stand the atmosphere in the room, so I tried to smooth things over. Congratulations on your marriage. I'm glad you both seem so happy. I'll be going now." After saying this hurriedly, I took Mike and escaped. At that time, I thought I had handled the situation well, but to Lisa, my attitude was nothing but a declaration of victory. Ever since then, Lisa had been giving me petty nuisances. Even 2 years after graduation, every time Lisa came to our house for a visit, she started throwing passive-aggressive remarks. Lisa would only come over on Saturday afternoons when her husband was at work. Of course, Mike never showed any interest in Lisa. But Lisa, on the other hand, would deliberately bring faded love letters from their elementary school days and try to one-up me. "Hey, look at this! I found a love letter from Mike when I was cleaning my room!" Sometimes she would laugh insincerely, pretending to be apologetic. Mike and I have a bond stronger than being related by blood or even being a couple. Sorry if this bothers you. We actually had a mutual affection for each other once, you know. You tore us apart, though. If I tried to argue with her, she would look down on me like this. But I get asked out a lot, so I was quickly snatched away by another guy. I don't care, but poor Mike, right? Oops. Did I say something wrong? Mike, without reprimanding Lisa's behavior, nostalgically empathized with her, and they would laugh together. "It's fine. Karen understands us well." That was his catchphrase. Of course, I had no intention of accepting their relationship. I've protested to Mike many times. But every time, he would deflect my points like this. "As a wife, you should be more relaxed. Don't you trust me? It's sad that you feel like that, being a married couple and all." In the end, it always results in a tense atmosphere and the conversation ends. I was starting to wonder if I could continue to believe in Mike. As autumn approached and the holiday season began, Lisa uttered something outrageous. "Hey, let's go on a 2-day, 1-night hot spring trip to a popular fall foliage spot. Just the 3 of us." I couldn't believe my ears. A trip together? The 3 of us? But Mike, true to form, was all for it. "Sounds fun. I'll make the reservation." As Mike reached for his cell phone, Lisa stopped him. "No need. I figured you'd agree, so I already made the reservation. I can't wait." She had taken the initiative to book the trip on a weekend when both Mike and I were off work. "Wait a minute. This is all so sudden. I hurriedly tried to stop it. Lisa, does your husband approve? And isn't it inappropriate to go on a trip with Mike, even if he is a childhood friend? In response to my cautioning, Lisa nonchalantly replied, "It's okay, if Karen is there too." From her answer, I inferred that her husband was probably not pleased with the idea, and understandably so. Even though I'm around, she visits her male childhood friend's house almost every week, let alone an overnight trip. He probably wouldn't easily approve. That night, I tried to convince Mike to cancel the trip, but I was met with, "It's too late now. We'd have to pay a cancellation fee." Nothing will happen. Don't worry, as usual. I was talked into it, and the day of the trip arrived. "Sorry for the wait. Let's get going, Karen." Upon spotting us, Lisa rushed over with an elated expression. Strangely, during the trip, Lisa didn't try to overshadow me or make suggestive remarks, even once. On the contrary, she was overly friendly, choosing souvenirs with me, taking photos together. Even my husband seemed happy, not having to deal with my irritations. I was a bit let down, as I had assumed that Lisa would link arms with Mike and behave like a couple during the trip. It seemed like my worries were for naught. In this way, we spent the day in harmony. As we were headed to the pre-booked hot spring inn for 3, Lisa suddenly turned towards me. "I'm sorry. It turns out I couldn't book the lodging properly, so Mike and I are in building 1, while you, Karen, ended up in building 2. Lisa apologized with her hands folded, and Mike, looking surprised, opened his mouth. "But we're not sharing a room, right? Mike and Lisa? Then, isn't that fine?" He easily agreed that it was fine. "Aw, Mike, you're getting your hopes up weirdly. Of course we're in separate rooms. Separate rooms." Lisa, who was loudly explaining in an almost high-pitched voice, and Mike, who was laughing without any sense of urgency. The problem wasn't about being in separate rooms, but that they had registered as a pair without explaining anything to us. It ruined the fun mood that had been there until now, and I, Karen, frowned and raised an objection. "Hold on a second. Even if you guys are childhood friends, that's just too much. Can't we change the room?" Then Lisa shook her head and continued to explain with a dejected face. "Due to identity verification, we can't cancel it now. I promise nothing's going on with Mike, so don't worry, okay?" To my stunned silence, Mike added fuel to the fire. "I've been thinking about this for a while, but can't you stop being jealous of Lisa?" "Jealous? I'm not. I hate that about you, Karen. It's a hassle for both Lisa and me." At his words, Lisa smirked as if she was victorious. As we passed each other, Lisa whispered in my ear, "I'm sorry to leave you all alone. I'm going to have a fun night with Mike, even on your behalf." They left me and strutted off to the inn. I took out my secret weapon hidden in my pocket and took a picture of their backs. I won't forgive them. I'll make them pay. The next morning, at the station where I interacted with them, Lisa was standing in shock with her eyes wide open. Why are you here?" Standing in front of her was Lisa's husband. His face was filled with anger, and he was quietly glaring at his wife. "Karen told me where you were. Seems like you're having a lot of fun." I stepped forward in front of Lisa's husband, deeply bowed my head. "Thank you for coming all this way today. I sincerely apologize for my husband's actions this time." With fake tears, I held a handkerchief to my eyes. Upon seeing this, he urged me to raise my head. "No, it's ultimately my responsibility. Lisa, my wife, is the one at fault. I will divorce her. I will definitely pay you for your troubles." "Divorce? What on earth are you talking about?" Lisa turned pale as her husband, his veins bulging in anger, berated her. "I thought it would be okay if we all went on a trip together, including Karen. But it seems I was wrong. I can't continue with you. We're getting a divorce." "Hold on a minute. There must be some mistake. Hear me out." As if to interrupt Lisa's words, I chimed in, matching the rhythm. Me too. Through this incident, I have been able to unveil my husband's true nature. I am also filing for divorce. At that moment, my husband opened his mouth wide and looked at us. What? Divorce? We haven't done anything wrong. At his words, Lisa also started to raise her voice in defense. No, that's right. It's just Karen's misunderstanding. We've been separate the entire time. There's nothing going on between him and me. Lisa quickly tried to link arms with her husband. However, he immediately shook it off and slowly took out his cell phone. It's no use trying to hide it. Can you say the same thing in front of these photos and recordings? He played the recording in front of everyone. I'm sorry for leaving you alone, Karen. I'll spend a fun night with Mike, including your part. Haha. What came from the cell phone was unmistakably Lisa's voice. Lisa's voice, which I had secretly recorded when she whispered in my ear. Mike was astounded by the recording and started yelling at Lisa. Lisa, you said this to Karen? I interrupted Mike's yelling and showed a different piece of evidence. Two people walking arm in arm towards a hotel in a town under the twilight. Anyone who saw it wouldn't hesitate to think these two are having an affair. A stitch in time saves 9. From the beginning, I had not trusted Lisa and had preserved evidence in crucial scenes. Anyway, I had set a condition before this trip. That was, if Mike didn't protect me from Lisa, we would definitely get a divorce this time. What they did was not strictly an affair. It may have been mean to collect evidence that hinted at an affair and send it to Lisa's husband. But I, too, have been constantly undermined by Lisa. There must be something during a trip with 3 people. Then I'll have to take measures as well. I thought this was the only chance to have her husband intervene and punish Lisa. Soon, Mike started to make excuses in an agitated manner. Karen, it's a misunderstanding. We were just heading to the inn together. Shut up. How many times do you think I've warned you about Lisa? I recalled how happily he had welcomed Lisa into our home, how he had repeatedly clashed with me for not welcoming her, how he had accepted staying in the same inn as Lisa without objection, and how he had brushed off my feelings as jealousy. As I started to throw all my piled-up resentments at Mike, he seemed to have realized that he was in the wrong. Without caring about the surroundings, he prostrated himself on the spot. I'm sorry. I'll stop seeing Lisa. But please, don't divorce me. Surprised by his sudden behavior, I listened to Mike continue. I don't love Lisa or anything like that anymore. She's just a friend. His words seemed to have shocked her. Even if her husband divorced her, she could eventually get together with Mike. Maybe that's what Lisa was thinking. After all, she was a housewife, and also a lady from a slightly good family, so she didn't have any work experience. She probably figured that if she lost her current husband, Mike was the only one left who seemed likely to marry her. That's why she was weighing her husband Mike against her as insurance. I understand what you're saying. At my words, Mike lifted his head and showed a bright expression. But regardless of whether or not you've cheated, I'm going to divorce you. I just can't stand your attitude. It's the worst. But, Karen, that's harsh. Who's the harsh one here? I found myself shouting. Mike, you fell right into Lisa's scheme. You intended to ostracize me from the start and stay with you in the same inn. I would have forgiven you if you had rejected her, but instead, you sided with Lisa. Have you ever considered how I felt being left alone during the trip? I'm sorry, Karen. I'm really sorry. He seemed deeply affected by my stern approach. Mike slumped down, head hanging low. Then, why did it have to turn out this way? Lisa began to cry, sitting on the road. It's a misunderstanding. Mike and I are like siblings. It's all because of Karen's jealousy. Jealousy? Finding her words ridiculous, I glared at Lisa in a provocative way. Who's been behaving in a way that stokes jealousy all this while? The moment Mike was taken from you, you started approaching him. Despite being a married woman, your behavior is low. But you just want to be fawned over by various men. You were upset when Mike's affections, which were once directed towards you, turned towards me. It's because of your behavior that your husband is fed up with you. Reflect on your actions, you trashy woman. Ugh, that's harsh. Crying won't help. After all, I'm a woman. Maybe you should ask your beloved Mike for help. Bye, Mike. See you. I got into Lisa's husband's car and went home, leaving the two behind. I had originally taken the train to the trip. They can go anywhere together for all I care. Lisa's breakdown looked pathetic, but I finally felt relieved. It seems that my personality is not as good as I thought. After returning home, I filled out the divorce papers, placed them on the table, and went back to my parents' house. I ignored all the incoming calls and emails from Mike. It seems that Lisa happily got divorced. I heard that Lisa and Mike were blaming each other for the divorce, and their friendship had collapsed. Since I've cut off all contact, I'm not sure what happened to them. As for me, I switched to working from home, and now I'm working comfortably without anyone bothering me. I'd rather not get married for a while, especially to a man with a childhood female friend.
Oh my, carrying such a large suitcase. Are you going on a trip? No, I'm going back to my parents' house. What? It seems mother-in-law couldn't quite process what I had just said. Her eyes widened in surprise. I'm tired of the housework and the constant nagging. Please have a happy life with Connor. What? Wait a minute. I slipped past the objecting mother-in-law and headed outside. Dragging my heavy suitcase, I got on the bus to return to my family's home. My name is Cecilia. I married Connor 4 years ago, and now we rent a one-bedroom apartment where we live together. The apartment we rent is a moderately high-end place, costing $2,000 a month, something Connor can't afford on his own. The reason we can live in such a luxurious apartment is solely due to my workload and salary. I'm somewhat embarrassed to say it, but I'm an ambitious career woman working in sales for a large corporation, working from morning till night. Starting early and working late is the norm for me, sacrificing my private life to stay on top in sales. I started living in this apartment because I wanted to enjoy a lavish lifestyle at least while I'm home. But my luxurious and peaceful days are beginning to slip away. The cause of this disturbance is mother-in-law, who has recently become a permanent guest in our apartment. I sometimes ask Connor to do the housework since I'm busy with my job, but instead of doing it himself, he calls mother-in-law and unloads the work on her. And mother-in-law, being mother-in-law, willingly comes over and does all the housework, so Connor's domestic skills never improve. Initially visiting our apartment twice a week, she now seems to live in our place. If it were just housework, I might have simply been grateful and not complained. What's been bothering me is mother-in-law's excessive interference. Why doesn't Cecilia quit her job after all this time? I can't possibly tell her it's because Connor's earnings are insufficient, so I reply with a shallow, "I'm sorry." She even adds, "A good wife bears children early on." The comments like that continue to trouble me. Certainly, I couldn't say that Connor was cooperative. His old-fashioned remarks, even anachronistic at times, were draining me, especially after long hours at work. Finally, he started to say things like, "You fold the clothes wrong," or "Using the dishwasher is not good." I couldn't help but wish he would leave if he continued to complain. Of course, I wasn't just silently putting up with this. I talked to Connor about it, but he wouldn't take me seriously. At first, he seemed to be listening to me sincerely, but in the end, he always sided with his mother, saying, "But Mom is right." When I lost patience with his mother, who continued to live with us without paying rent or for food, and demanded she either pay or leave, Connor sided with mother-in-law and decided to let her live with us for free. Slowly but surely, the paradise I had created with my earnings was being taken over by mother-in-law. One day, after talking to my parents on the phone, I began planning a small party and invited them to our home. My mother's birthday was coming up, and I was likely to get paid time off. My parents had mentioned that they wanted to see my apartment, so I thought it was a good opportunity. I excitedly started planning and called out to Connor, who was lying on the sofa browsing on his mobile phone. "Hey, I'm thinking of inviting my parents over next month. Will you join us, Connor?" Connor and my parents had only met once, during our marriage meeting, and they hadn't interacted much. I was hoping it would be a pleasant dinner party and that mother-in-law could join if she was available. "What? There's no way we're letting your poor-looking parents into this apartment," he snapped. "Excuse me? How can you say that?" I yelled, shocked by his comment. Connor put down his phone, plugged his ears, and glared at me. "But it's true. They were wearing cheap clothes when we went for the marriage meeting," he said. I struggled to contain my anger, my fists shaking. I was used to be spoken to harshly, but I couldn't tolerate my parents being insulted. My anger boiled up, and I had to be careful not to scream at Connor. I don't want to say this, but I started trying to calm myself. Your mother-in-law is no different from my mother. What's so poor about my parents? Are your parents big corporate bosses or something? Of course that was not the case. His father was a salaried worker, and mother-in-law was a homemaker from an ordinary family. Still, Connor scowled, annoyed by my words. "At least they make more money than your parents. We didn't have to rely on a scholarship for college like you did," he said proudly, puffing out his chest. I took out a scholarship because I wanted to go to college on my own, without depending on my parents. I almost said, "It's not like you unable to leave your parents," but I swallowed my words. Fighting here wouldn't solve anything. After all, I just want to invite my parents to the apartment. It's not like we'll live together forever. I'm just asking if I can invite them for just one day, or even half a day. "That's why I'm saying no. If you can't accept it, leave this apartment." What? Why are you talking about me leaving? "If you can't obey me, I don't need you. I don't even want to live with you." I saw Connor spit those words out with hate, and something inside me snapped. "Fine, if you say so, I'll leave. But once I leave, I'm not paying the rent here, okay? Can you afford to live on your own, Connor?" "Humph, worried about money? My mom's a homemaker, but she makes big money. $2,000 rent is nothing to her." I thought Connor was just ranting, but it turns out he plans to rely on his mother's income. I was more stunned than angry. I really can't understand Connor's dependent thinking. Why did I marry this man? I never thought I'd see the day when I could not trust my judgment of men. I threw down the planner I had been writing in and pulled a suitcase from the closet. The closet was filled with the stuff my mother-in-law had brought over, and my belongings had been pushed to the back. Connor seemed a bit flustered as he watched me pack calmly, but in the end, he said nothing. I finished packing, headed for the door without a word to Connor, and ran into my mother-in-law, just back from shopping. "Oh, such big luggage. Are you going on a trip? No, I'm going back to my parents' house. Huh? My mother-in-law seemed unable to process what I'd said. Her eyes widened. Thank you for everything, like the housework and the sarcastic comments. Please be happy with Connor. What? Wait a minute, Cecilia! I slipped past my restraining mother-in-law and went outside. I dragged my heavy suitcase to catch the bus back to my parents' house. My parents laughed uproariously at the whole story. Even I was annoyed by their laughter, as if they were saying I was petty. Hey, it's not a laughing matter.
Sorry. Cecilia, you are quite the character. Getting that angry over a comment about your parents?
Was it a case of an eye for an eye? Even my usually reserved mother was covering her mouth and shaking her shoulders with laughter.
Don't worry. One day, Connor will introduce you to an apartment.
Dad, what are you talking about? There's no way Connor would let me have a room. I looked at my father in disbelief, but he just laughed with my mother and never explained his words. Eventually, I became busy with work, and thoughts of Connor and the apartment completely slipped my mind. I was still living with my parents and saw them every day, but we hadn't talked about the apartment since that day. Half a year had passed since I was kicked out of the apartment by Connor. Worn out from early morning commutes and late night overtime, I was leading a lazy life, sleeping through the day on my days off. My parents unexpectedly approached me.
Finally awake? We're thinking of going to the apartment where Connor lives. Want to join us?
Still half asleep, I couldn't understand what my father was saying, so I tilted my head in confusion. Seeing me standing there, lost in thought, my mother lost her patience and forcefully pushed me from behind. Come on, get dressed quickly. Put on something really nice. Encouraged by my mother, I put on a dress I'd never worn before. It was a high-brand, quite expensive gift from my parents for my birthday, so I never had the inclination to wear it and kept it tucked away. Looking more closely, I realized that both my mother and father were also dressed in high-brand clothes they usually wouldn't wear. It was as if they were showing off their earnings. Before I knew it, I was transported to the apartment building where Connor had lived. I thought we would be turned away at the auto-locked entrance, but that worry was unnecessary. The person we were looking for was standing there in the entrance, dumbfounded. Connor and his mother-in-law were surrounded by a large amount of luggage, standing still in the entrance. Upon seeing me, Connor's face contorted.
Hey, Cecilia, what's going on? We've been kicked out of our apartment.
Kicked out? Did you pay the rent? I thought it was an obvious question, but Connor looked away, embarrassed.
I paid it. I even went into debt to make the payment.
I was utterly dumbfounded by Connor's words. As I suspected, the claim that mother-in-law was earning money was a lie. And yet, Connor and mother-in-law kept up the pretense, living in a luxury apartment, even going into debt. I would have moved out long ago. So why were you kicked out? Did you cause any trouble or something? Connor shook his head, having no clue. Mother-in-law, who had been silently listening, also seemed to have no idea. Looking at the luggage in the entrance shamefacedly.
Ha 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 ha!
The mood was broken by my father's laughter. His hearty laugh echoed through the entrance. My mother also covered her mouth elegantly, as if laughing. What's so funny, Dad?
No, I'm sorry. It's just amusing. Connor's room, we'll give it to Cecilia. If you don't want to use one, we can arrange for a new one. What? What are you talking about?
Connor's voice rose in confusion before mine. Mother-in-law, like me, was bewildered, her gaze wandering.
Didn't you know? This apartment had been owned by our company for the past 3 months.
Connor stared at my father, his eyes wide open. My parents are the presidents of the company. With my added explanation, mother-in-law's mouth fell open as if she couldn't believe it. It was understandable. I hadn't told Connor that my father was a real estate agent's president. More to the point, my mother was the president of a subsidiary under my father's company. Together, they were a successful entrepreneurial couple. Perhaps I inherited those genes because I had an exceptional talent in sales. Connor must have misunderstood my family to be poor, based on the clothes we wore when meeting him and the fact that I went to college on a scholarship, but that was a mistake. Connor's anger was then directed at me.
Why didn't you tell me that Cecilia's dad is the company's president? If I had known, I would've...
And what if you had known? Just so you know, I'm not living here on my parents' dime, unlike you, who's always relying on mother-in-law. Surprisingly, it was not Connor but mother-in-law who accepted the reality quicker. Maybe she judged the hierarchy at a glance by looking at my mother's high-end clothing. Suddenly, with a look of trying to gauge my parents' mood, she began to speak. I sold the house because Connor said to move here. If we're kicked out, we'll have nowhere to live. Mother-in-law glances at my parents' faces, but neither of them breaks a smile. It's terrifying even to me, their actual daughter, that their eyes aren't smiling. My mother smiles softly to reassure mother-in-law and politely brings up the subject. You've been behind on rent for over 3 months, haven't you? We've sent reminders and called many times, but with no response, we've had to proceed with eviction. I look at Connor, wondering if he really was behind, and he quickly looks away. It seems that he could only pay his debts for the first 3 months. Mother-in-law's situation was the same, and she looks uncomfortable being scolded by my mother. Can't you do something about it? Please? You're the company's president, right? Mother-in-law pleads with my parents. However, my father firmly pushes mother-in-law away.
I'm the president and I've decided on the eviction. You must comply.
You're trying to live well without paying rent. Isn't that too selfish? Cornered by my parents, mother-in-law looks to Connor for help. But Connor stays still, not budging. As if he's abandoning mother-in-law, as if he doesn't want to get involved, he just stands there. I feel anger bubbling up again at his indifferent behavior. I've thought about it for 6 months. I can't reconcile with Connor. Let's get a divorce.
What? Wait, divorce?
I glare at the flustered Connor. I can't live with someone who insults my parents. My parents look at me, almost dazzled by the words I've declared.
What am I going to do now?
Connor falls to his knees on the ground, dejected. Though I want to keep watching his ridiculous figure, I'm not that heartless. You need to find a way to pay the overdue rent. Why not sell all your furniture and stuff? You won't have anywhere to take it anyway. I glance at the pile of Connor and mother-in-law's belongings in the entrance. Despite the unpaid rent, there are many luxurious items like brand name products and watches. Selling them might help a bit. Feeling a little reluctant to leave them stranded, I began to efficiently sort through the unattended luggage on the floor.
The truck should be here soon. Let's transport everything to our warehouse for now.
My father also cooperated with me. As Connor and mother-in-law sulked, unable to do anything, the belongings that had occupied the entrance were quickly put away, leaving only the valuable brand clothing, jewelry, and watches. Why don't you visit our shop later? We also deal in buying watches and jewelry. With a business smile, my mother hands her business card to mother-in-law. It was a completely dazzling move. She kicks Connor and mother-in-law out of the apartment and doesn't forget to promote her business. I never feel like I can catch up to my parents. and I still can't be as ruthless as my parents when it comes to business. As I'm absent-mindedly staring at my parents, my father says with a calm face,
"People who judge others by appearance and call them poor don't belong in this apartment."
With those words, I was certain. My parents were holding a grudge against what Connor had said. Connor seemed desperate to pay the rent, repeatedly borrowing money everywhere. Not only from lenders, but also from his colleagues and superiors. It became a topic in the company that Connor never returned the money. Connor lost his place in the company and was forced to resign after paying back all the money he had borrowed from company employees. Mother-in-law, who had been living with him and was only trying to benefit from him, was probably guilty as well. After being kicked out of the apartment, mother-in-law moved into the company dormitory with Connor and started working as a part-time worker at a factory. The fact that the factory where she was working was part of my father's corporate group is nothing short of laughable. 1 month after Connor was kicked out of the apartment, I successfully got divorced. Additionally, I received a room in the apartment as a lifetime gift from my parents, and I'm leading a comfortable life. Work is as busy as ever, but I have been promoted for my sales skills. Now that I'm single, I'm thinking of devoting myself even more to my work.